Hey everyone, it's Emily from Cottage Remedies. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make meat stock. So I want to clarify first off that meat stock is actually different to bone broth, and the main difference is the time that they're cooked for. So meat stock is cooked for a much shorter time than bone broth is, and the meat stock is actually what's recommended to be consumed on the GAPS diet. If you have any, this is my recommendation, if you have any sort of gut issue, you would want to be choosing meat stock. That is because it's actually much easier to digest and it's way lower in histamines. So bone broth is actually more likely to cause a reaction in people who are sensitive or are trying to heal a leaky gut, for example. So I just always choose to go with meat stock because of that reason. I also have read up about some different articles writing about how bone broth, because of the extended period of time that it is cooked for, can actually develop natural MSG within the broth, and that can also cause a negative reaction in some people as well. So that's why I'm going to be showing you how to make meat stock. This is what I go for, and the only difference is just how much time it's cooked for. So I'm going to be making a beef stock today, and I cook a beef stock for 5 hours, and a stock is a maximum of 6 hours. So anywhere from that 5 to 6 hour time for a beef stock is ideal. And if you're making a chicken stock, then you want to only be cooking it for about 3 hours. But as I said, I'm not making chicken stock today, so it's a little bit different. But other than that, the chicken stock and the different meats that you use for a stock, the recipe is pretty much the same besides the timing and the spices that you want to put in. So when making a beef stock, you want to be selecting bones from the animal that's going to be having the most collagen within it. So you're going to be choosing, first of all, bony bones. You want less meat on the bones and just more bones. You also want to choose bones with joints, because then there's going to be a lot of collagen within those joints. So I pretty much always choose the same. I used to use neck bones as well. I haven't been using neck bones lately just because for some reason I do find the neck bones are just a little bit unnecessarily expensive for a stock for some reason. I keep hitting the pot. But I have found some really good grass-fed, a bag of just beef bones. I don't even know exactly what they are, of what part of the body they are, but they are genuinely just a bag of bones. And it's really cheap because obviously there's hardly any meat on here, but there is a little bit. So it's just called a beef marrow bone. And as you can see, it usually will come with a section of it at the end that is full of, it's very fatty and there's a lot of connective joints. So that's what you're looking for. And then obviously there is going to be marrow in there as well, which is going to be really beneficial. I used to actually scoop it out and I would eat the bone marrow on some of my meals, but lately I've just been putting it into the stock anyways. So those are going to be the bones that I'm using for this beef stock. There are other options that you can use, like oxtail would be a little bit more on the expensive side though. And then like I said, beef neck bones. But I use these two options over and over again for my latest beef stocks, and these specific parts of the animal I find actually give me a very gelatinous stock. So I just think that these ones are working really well. But then it's of course what you can find at your local butcher. Now the other ingredients that you add to your stock is, optional. Some people just do the bones in water. Otherwise you can add some vegetables, which is going to be giving a little bit more flavoring and adding minerals to the stock. And so the other ingredients that I add to the stock are organic carrots, as well as onions, garlic, and then I also add, of course, sea salt. I also use whole peppercorns, and the herb that I add, you can pretty much choose what you feel tastes the best. I have used rosemary, but I actually don't like it as much as thyme. So I do use thyme leaves. And then this is something that I only started recently. It's not actually written in the GAPS book on how to make stock, but I have read somewhere of people actually adding apple cider vinegar to the meat stock. Supposedly it actually helps extract more nutrients. So I'm just trialing it. I haven't noticed any, it's really hard to tell whether it works or not, to be honest. But so this is optional if you want to do this or not, but you can add apple cider vinegar. Always raw, unfiltered with the mother when selecting apple cider vinegar, and organic as well, like usual. Okay, so that is the ingredients. So I'm going to be showing you how to make it. All right, so it's really simple, but you want to get some kind of stock pot. I don't know exactly how big this is, but I fill it up to a certain amount. I don't really have the measurements for this, but ideally what you want to be doing is boiling the water, and the water should just be covering all the bones that you put in. So you kind of just want to eye it a little bit, because otherwise it's just extra labor that's unnecessary if you want to weigh all the bones and then measure out the exact liters to kilograms, for example. But I just find that a bit unnecessary. So I just fill it up to about halfway with my reverse osmosis filtered water. I get it boiling, and then I add in all the bones, and then I add any more water that's necessary to get it just covering the bones so that everything and all the ingredients are submerged. So I'm going to start with that and then show you how it's going when I'm done with that. So just in case it's helpful, I did notice measurements on the inside. So it looks like it's roughly about 7.5 liters. So I'm going to leave this to boil, and while that's happening, I'm going to be cutting up all the vegetables. All right, so the water is boiling, so I'm going to be adding all the bones into the water. I made a second one just in case it all doesn't fit in this one. So I'm adding in all the bones raw. You can roast them beforehand, but I just put them straight away in raw. That's how you make a GAPS meat stock. The roasting, in my opinion, all it does is it supposedly makes it taste better or enhances the flavor, but I feel as though that just takes away from the beneficial properties of a meat stock being easy to digest. So all the bones fit in this stock pot, so I didn't need the second one, but I'm just going to be adding a bit more water to get it a bit higher. Now you don't want to add any of the other ingredients in just yet. You want to let this boil or simmer for about another 10 minutes, because what's going to happen is any scum, which is really the impurities, are going to be rising to the top, and you want to scoop this off or skim it off the top before you add in the rest of the ingredients and let it simmer for 5 hours. So I cut up all the vegetables. As you can see, I cut them very large, because if you cut everything too small, then it's probably going to turn to mush. This is just roughly the amount that I used for one stock pot. There's no measurements to it. This was 3 large onions, and then all the carrots that you saw in that bag, and then some garlic cloves, which these will be crushed up. So I haven't noticed any scum rise to the top, so I'm going to be skipping that step, but it has happened for me in the past when I was using different bones from different butcher. If you notice it, then it's optional. It's nothing bad. But I did find that if I skimmed it off, it actually tasted better. The stock tasted better. So if you notice it, then you can skim it off. Otherwise, you can just proceed with the next step. And the next step is just to add the rest of the ingredients into the stock pot and then leave it to simmer for 5 hours. And this is what it looks like after I've added all the ingredients. So for the peppercorns, you can see them on top. I just sprinkled them on top. There was not really a measurement for it. And I also did the same with the thyme. Then for the sea salt, I added 4.5 teaspoons roughly, and I put in 1 tablespoon of the apple cider vinegar. For the 5-hour simmer, I'm moving it onto a smaller burner and I'm putting a heat pad over the top because you don't want it to boil, you just want it to be simmering and staying at the same heat roughly for that period of time. And that's where I'll just leave it. Once the stock is finished, you want to separate the bones from the stock. I do this by, first of all, just pulling out any of the major bones, and then I pour it through a strainer to completely separate the stock. Finally, pour it into large jars and store in the fridge. So it's the next day, and I'm going to show you the beef stock after it's been in the fridge. So what I do is I scoop off the fat from the top and I just keep it in a container and I use it for my cooking because just drinking it, like drinking liquid fat, is a little bit, it's not as fun. So put some aside, and sometimes I do get it a bit thicker than this. I did have a bit of a difficulty because the wind blew out the flame at some point and I didn't know what time it blew out the flame. So it didn't cook straight. It cooled down and I cooked it a little bit longer. So usually it actually will be much thicker than this, but this is still very good, very gelatinous, which is what you want. Okay, so that is how you make a gut healing beef stock. If you like this video, then please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to follow along with all my other videos.